Hey, I'm Stephanie, and it's time to get cheeky. We're decluttering cheek cosmetics today. It's all part of my Panning for Gold series, where I declutter any makeup that's not a gold nugget. In this round, I've been comparing blushes, bronzers, and highlighters from my collection to see which ones I really want to keep. And I deliberately chose products that are very similar to one another, because that helps me find out exactly which ones work best for my skin type and preferences. Several of today's items have been discontinued, so I'm going to be focusing less on formula and more on the mindset behind makeup curation today, because I find that different people's mindsets on collecting makeup is just as interesting as the products they choose and how they apply them. So what's your makeup philosophy? Collector? Completionist? Minimalist? Maximalist? All of the above? None of the above? I feel like I'm still in the midst of figuring out exactly what I want, but I think I'm kind of a mix. I don't mind having a larger collection, but only in certain categories, because I want to be able to realistically rotate through everything I have, having the time to enjoy it all, because the way I enjoy makeup is by using it, not just owning it, which means I have to streamline things and avoid dupes unless the different formulas or formats serve specific purposes. And that is precisely why I am doing this project. And it has led me to declutter things I never would have imagined. For instance, in my last video where I decluttered an absolutely iconic eyeshadow palette, and it just shocked me. But this project just showed me that it was redundant in my collection and I had something better. So I'll leave the link in the show notes in case you missed it. As a side note, I'm wearing a super chunky sweater today because it's freezing here, but I keep getting distracted by the image in the monitor because I just feel like the sweater looks so ginormous that it's making my head look tiny. Is it coming across that way on camera, or is it just the monitor? If so, enjoy my tiny head. But you know what? We're just going to call it a smart reference. Have you ever seen the concert Stop Making Sense by the Talking Heads? If you haven't, I'm going to link it below because you're really missing something. But basically, in that concert, the lead singer, David Byrne, is wearing this absurdly enormous suit. And in an interview about that concert, he is asked why he's wearing such an absurdly huge suit. And he just responds by saying,
"I wanted my head to appear smaller. And the easiest way to do that was to make my body bigger.
So we're just going to say this was deliberate, and
I wanted my head to appear smaller."
But let's get into the makeup, starting the curation with the blushes. I compared Becca's blush in Flowerchild to the classic Luminoso from Milani. I feel like these blushes look relatively similar in the pan, but they are very different when swatched. The Becca blush is a fresh, warm pink blush with a satin finish, while Luminoso is a much peachier pink and has a much more luminous finish. So this is definitely satin, and this is almost a highlighter with its shine. Although both of these are beautiful blushes, the decision between the two of them was actually pretty organic and easy. During testing, I just very naturally always gravitated towards the Luminoso blush, which surprised me because I am a bit of a packaging snob, and the Becca packaging is just better on every level. It feels sturdier, weightier, more solid. It feels good to the touch. Interacting with this packaging is just so much easier and more pleasant. Whereas Milani is a drugstore product. The packaging looks and feels cheap. In fact, it feels like it might break if I just look at it the wrong way. It rattles. And because there's a brush compartment at the bottom, sometimes it flips the wrong way while I'm trying to use it. This is just all around unpleasant packaging that's annoying and difficult to interact with. But the product inside is so good that I was willing to put up with the annoying, cheap packaging, which says a lot because I get weirdly sensitive about fiddly, clumsy packaging like this. The blush inside looks like a very luminous blush on me in the winter, but it functions as a highlighter in the summer. So it's a really versatile product for me. And I feel like every time I wear it, whether it's as a blush or a highlighter, it gives me a glass skin look. The Becca blush in Flowerchild, as pretty and perfectly functional as it is simply a pretty pink blush that works really well. But I feel like pretty much every brand on the market has a blush in this shade and finish that works really well. So it's not particularly special. In fact, I even think I have another dupe for it in my collection in the form of my blush duo from Cover FX in the shade shade Pink Dahlia. As we can clearly see, I have not hit pan in any of these very similar blushes, which means I do not need all of them, and a blush of this quality should not go to waste and just expire in my drawer. So I'll be rehoming it. Maybe next I'll have to put these to the test. Luminoso against Cover FX Pink Dahlia. In fact, I think I will. Now let's talk highlighters. The Nude Air Luminizer from Dior and the Champagne Pop highlighter from Becca are also both lovely, but I find my use of them pretty limited. Even though the color of both of these does function on my skin as a highlighter, they're not too dark, I do find that these shades look best when I have a tan, which means that I use these highlighters only in the summer. And I definitely don't need two highlighters that I can only use for part of the year. In fact, I'm not sure that I need either of them, but that's a discussion for a later date, because the whole reason that I'm doing this slow motion project pan style declutter instead of one gigantic dramatic declutter is because it gives me time to see how I interact with my collection as it evolves to better suit my needs. I feel like that's helping me make better decisions for the long term, and it's also really helping to influence my purchasing behavior in positive ways, which is really useful right now because as I record this, we're currently in the midst of Black Friday madness. So for now, I'm just going to declutter one of these. And the decision here was a little bit more difficult because the finish of both of these is so different, but they're both equally beautiful. The Champagne Pop highlighter has a smoother finish, whereas the Dior highlighter has a more sparkling finish. It's not glittery, but it is sparkly, and I enjoy both types of finishes. But the real deciding factor for me was the color. The Dior has more beige undertones, which just suits me better, whereas the Champagne Pop does have the tendency to pull a little bit orange on me. So I will be keeping the Dior Skin Nude Air Luminizer for now. This just in. In addition to cheek products, the Style Stumbler has apparently also been testing orange lipsticks. This battle was between the YSL Tint in Balm in shade 8 and the Jane Iredale lipstick in the shade Forever Red. In an interview earlier today, the Style Stumbler shared her thoughts. This comparison made me realize that I despise lip stains. I change my mind too many times a day for that kind of commitment. Apparently, although the color of these products had a similar effect on the lips, and both of these items had a very pleasant, fruity scent, the staining quality of the Jane Iredale lipstick was simply too much for the beauty blogger, who apparently much prefers to change her lip color several times a day. That woman is truly a chameleon, huh, Stephanie?
I guess, Stephanie, if you consider someone who wears very slight variations of the same color of lipstick every day a chameleon. We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming. You have no sense of nuance. Of course I have a sense of nuance, but I'm telling you, on her, mauve is pink.
And last, we have the battle of the bronzers, and we have two heavy hitters today with Benefit's Hoola bronzer and Too Faced's Chocolate Soleil bronzer. Truth be told, both of these are really good. This is the first Hoola bronzer that I've ever owned, but this is the third or maybe even fourth Too Faced Chocolate Soleil bronzer that I've been through. I've panned at least two, and I don't know if you can see it on camera, but from here I can even start to see the outline of the pans because I've used this one so much. So the winner is obvious, right? Not so fast. I repurchased this one repeatedly because I knew it worked for me, so it was an easy choice. But when this one was decluttered to me, it gave me the opportunity to try something new, risk-free. So I took advantage of that, and I have to say, as lovely as both of these are, this direct head-to-head comparison has shown me the differences between them, or really the difference. Both of these are matte, both of them are very lightweight on my skin, and both of them are beautiful. But the one difference is in the tone, and I have to say, the Hoola bronzer is ever so slightly better suited to my skin. During the summer, I would use these two together, Hoola as my bronzer, Chocolate Soleil as my contour powder, to give me some extra bronzy dimension, and it looked great on my tanned skin. But I am also fully aware that I am probably the only person on earth who noticed the subtle difference between these two. And to be quite frank, that tiny difference doesn't give me enough satisfaction to justify keeping both of them. So in the interest of passing on great products so that they get the use that they should, I am finally parting ways with my Too Faced Chocolate Soleil bronzer. Once again, I'm a little bit shocked. And with that, I have now completely curated both my powder highlighter and my powder bronzer collections, meaning that I now know exactly what I have in those categories and how and when I like to use each of those individual items. But a new cream bronzer has since been decluttered to me in the form of this Fenty Beauty Cheeks Out Freestyle Cream Bronzer in the shade 2. Butter Biscuit. I already thought of my cream bronzer category as curated, but I'm reopening the file for this one because I did try it out and my first impression of this is that it's really good. So now I need to see if it can compete with what I already have and if it's worth keeping because it serves a different or specific purpose within my collection. So to do that, I thought I would compare it to this, which is the most similar color that I had, and it is the Patrick Ta Major Sculpt Cream Bronzer from his bronzer duos. I removed the cream bronzer from that Patrick Ta compact because I wanted to declutter the powder bronzer. It just couldn't hold its own against the powder bronzers I already had. But the cream is something else. So I kind of hope that Patrick Ta will consider releasing this as a separate product at some point because it's so much better than the powder, at least in my opinion. And if I ever had to repurchase it, I would just want to repurchase this and not the powder. But back to today's issue, we now have to see if Fenty can hold its own against the Patrick Ta. If you'd like to see which blushes and bronzers will make it through the next round, make sure you're subscribed. And of course, I am still curating other cosmetic categories as well. I have a lot of new subscribers lately, so if you happen to be new here and you enjoy this style of video, I've compiled a playlist of this project so you can catch up if you want. That will be linked below. Thanks so much for hanging out. I hope that you'll like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. But even if you don't, I hope you have a great week. And we can all remember that even stumbling can be a form of moving forward. So let's stumble in style.